At my parents' wedding anniversary, they invited me but told me to wear black because pastels are for prettier people. But when I arrived, everyone else was in florals, and my sister said, "You're just here for the drama." So I turned around, took the custom cake I had paid $430 for, and walked out. 3 days later, they begged me to remake it for their do-over. I'm not sure whether I'm looking for advice or just trying to get this out of my system. Maybe both. It's been a few weeks and I still can't shake how everything went down. I keep replaying it in my head, the look my sister gave me, the way everyone went quiet when I showed up, the way my mom wouldn't even meet my eyes. What's worse is that none of it was new. This was just the latest installment in a very long, very quiet pattern of my family making me feel like the black sheep. Except this time, they told me to wear black literally. Here's what happened. I was invited to my parents' 45th wedding anniversary. It was supposed to be a casual garden party, hosted at their home in Stillwater, Minnesota. My sister Candace took over the planning naturally. She always does. She's the golden child, 2 kids, white picket fence, a house full of throw pillows that say things like live, laugh, love. Her entire life is Pinterest-worthy, curated, and broadcast in carefully filtered Instagram posts. Me? I'm 42, divorced, and I run a custom cake business out of my little home kitchen in St. Paul. I love what I do, but I've never quite fit the image my parents wanted to project. I don't have the perfect family, the flashy career, or the delicate manners. I'm the rough around the edges daughter. At best, I'm tolerated. At worst, ignored. The invitation came via group text. "Hi all. For the party, we're going for a garden vibe, light and floral. Marta, maybe wear black? You know how pastels can look on some skin tones, lol." I stared at that message for a long time. I don't wear pastels often, sure. But it wasn't about color theory. It was Candace's way of saying I didn't fit. She wrapped the insult in a joke, but it landed the way it was meant to. Still, I said okay. I said okay like I always do. Like I did last Thanksgiving when they forgot to save me a seat at the table, or when they left me out of the family Christmas card because they only had room for one daughter. It's always just a joke. A harmless oversight. A small thing. I told myself I wouldn't let it get to me. That I'd go, be civil, drop off the cake I'd been commissioned to make, and leave. That's it. The cake was something special. A 3-tiered lemon chiffon with raspberry preserves and hand-piped buttercream peonies. I spent 12 hours on it. Candace asked for something soft and romantic to match the garden theme. I nailed it. I spent $430 out of pocket on ingredients and decor. I didn't even ask to be reimbursed. I wanted it to be perfect. I guess I thought, in some small way, it might help them see me differently. That they'd be proud. When the day came, I put on a black maxi dress with a soft drape and a pair of simple black heels. I tied my hair back, loaded the cake into the car, and drove out to Stillwater with my heart in my throat. As soon as I pulled into the driveway, I knew something was off. The garden was blooming roses, hydrangeas, lilacs. Tables draped in cream linen, place settings with printed menus. Everyone was in florals. Soft pastels, breezy fabrics, colors that made the whole event look like a magazine spread. Everyone but me. I stood at the edge of the lawn for a full minute, holding the cake box. I could feel my cheeks start to burn. My black dress suddenly felt 10 times heavier. Then Candace spotted me. She turned around slowly, looked me up and down, and raised one perfectly shaped brow. "Oh. You actually wore black?" "I was kidding," she said, then laughed quietly. "You're just here for the drama, huh?" I didn't respond. My mouth went dry. My mom looked over and quickly turned away. My dad stayed seated, pretending not to see me. That was when something inside me hardened. No one said thank you for the cake. No one came to take it from me, or ask how long it had taken. They just stared. Like I was some distant cousin who had crashed the event. So I turned around, walked back to my car, opened the trunk, and carefully placed the cake inside. Then I drove home. They didn't follow. No texts. No calls. Nothing. Until 3 days later. Candace texted first. "Hey, weird energy the other day. Mom and Dad are doing a redo this weekend, just a few neighbors and close friends. Could you make another cake? Everyone loved the design. I'll Venmo you the cost." Then Mom, "We're sorry the party didn't go as planned. Your father and I were disappointed you left. We want to do a smaller gathering this time. It would mean a lot if you could recreate the cake." I stared at my phone for hours. The audacity. Not a word about the insult. No acknowledgement of the dig about my appearance. No apology. Just a request. Like nothing had happened. I didn't reply. Not that day. Not the next. I let them stew. When I finally did respond, it was short: "Same cake, $1,300. Full payment up front." My phone buzzed an hour later. Dad had Venmo'd the entire amount. So I started baking. But this time, the design was different. This time, the buttercream flowers weren't soft peonies, they were dark dahlias. Rich burgundy, sharp edges, deep shadows in every petal. Still elegant, still beautiful, but undeniably bold. A visual middle finger to their delicate little brunch fantasy. The inside was richer, 2 dark chocolate layers with raspberry coulis. Less sugar, more bite. As I prepped the tiers, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Power. Not control in a cruel way, but clarity. Boundaries. I dressed in a crimson sheath dress, hair pinned, no apologies. I didn't sneak in the back like hired help this time. I walked in through the front, set the cake down on the display table, nodded at the guests, and didn't say a word to my mother. Candace came over eventually. I could see her struggling to smile. She said, "Wow. You really changed the aesthetic." I just looked at her and said, "So did you." Then I walked back to my car, heels crunching on the gravel. I didn't stick around for compliments. I didn't care if it made the cut on her Instagram story. And I didn't look back when she started explaining the cake to people like she had any hand in it. Because in that moment, I realized something: maybe I'll never be the daughter they show off. Maybe I'm not the pastel, easy-to-digest version of what they wanted. But I don't have to keep begging for space at a table I built half of myself. I drove home in silence that day. No music, no podcasts, just the hum of the road and the occasional thud of my own heartbeat as I tried to process the past few hours. When I got home, I didn't cry. I thought I would. Maybe a few years ago, I would have curled up in bed and scrolled through old photos, wondering what I did wrong and how I could do better next time. That's what they always made me feel, like I was the problem that needed fixing. But this time, I just poured myself a glass of wine, opened my laptop, and started drafting a new section on my website. Bespoke celebration cakes, bold, elegant, and a little bit defiant. It wasn't about them anymore. It was about me. In the days that followed, the silence from my family stretched. No follow-up texts. No thank you. Not even a passive-aggressive "hope you got home safe." Just radio silence. It didn't sting the way I expected it to. If anything, it confirmed what I already knew: my role in this family has always been conditional. Conditional on compliance, on humility, on showing up in a way that made them look good. But I was done with that. 3 days later, I got a message from someone unexpected: my Aunt Sylvie, my mother's older sister. We hadn't spoken in years. She had a falling out with my mom over something I never fully understood, something about the way Mom handled Grandma's estate and how Sylvie said she was obsessed with optics. That had been a huge scandal in our family. They hadn't spoken since 2018. Her message was short: "Heard about the cake. You walked out with your head high. Good for you. Let me know if you're free for lunch." I stared at that message for a long time. We met the following Sunday at a small cafe near the riverfront. Sylvie looked older than I remembered, but her energy was the same: sharp eyes, no nonsense. She didn't ask about the party. She didn't have to. Word spreads fast in families like ours. She sipped her tea and said, "Your mother's embarrassed, by the way. She won't say it, but she is. Not because you left, but because you left with dignity." I didn't know what to say to that, so I just nodded. "She's used to holding the strings," Sylvie went on. "You cut yours. That's always going to rattle people like her." It was oddly comforting. Like being seen in a way I never had been before. We talked for hours that day. About family patterns. About generational pride. About how sometimes the most radical thing you can do is walk away without making a scene. That conversation stuck with me. Not long after, I started getting inquiries on my site. Not just orders, but specific requests. One bride wanted a rebellious floral theme. A mom ordered a birthday cake for her daughter and said, something that says, "I'm not sweet, I'm strong." A therapist in Minneapolis ordered a cake for her clinic's anniversary that just said "healing isn't linear" in gold leaf on a midnight black ganache. I didn't market for this. But the vibe had shifted. People were drawn to something in my work that I hadn't even put into words yet. Maybe because I had finally allowed myself to bake from truth instead of performance. And that truth didn't look like pastels anymore. I started saying no more, too. Candace texted 2 weeks after the party. She wanted to circle back about family dinner. Said it would be a low-key thing, no drama this time. She ended the message with, "We'd love to have you, and the kids want to see their auntie." I stared at that message for a while. And then, with calm fingers, I typed back, "Thanks for the invite. I'm not ready to pretend things are normal yet." She didn't reply. I didn't expect her to. Mom followed up the next day with a voicemail. Just said, "We miss you. Let's not let one misunderstanding define everything." Her voice sounded tight. Like she was forcing the softness. I didn't return the call. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty about it. Because here's the thing no one tells you about setting boundaries with your family: they don't clap when you do it. They don't cheer you on or thank you for protecting your peace. In fact, they might go quiet, or call you difficult, or tell others that you've changed. But you have changed. That's the point. I wasn't the same person who wore black to that party thinking it was a compromise. I was someone new, someone who could walk away without looking back, even if it meant walking alone. And if they couldn't accept that version of me, then maybe they never really saw me at all. Weeks passed. Not quickly, not painfully. Just passed. My days filled up with orders. My nights became quieter but clearer. I stopped checking the group chat. I archived Candace's texts. I muted the notifications from my mother's Facebook, where she had posted photos from the do-over party with a caption that read, "What matters most is knowing how to move forward gracefully." The cake was there in the background of a few shots, untagged. No credit. I almost laughed when I saw that. The image was beautiful, curated like always, but to me, it looked hollow. Like posing with someone else's victory. I didn't confront her. I didn't need to. That same week, I delivered a cake to a bookstore hosting a divorce recovery group. The client had ordered a vanilla bean and cherry jam layer cake with the words "Glad You're Gone" written in gold script. She hugged me at pickup. Said she felt seen. I went home and cried, not because I was sad, but because finally, I was doing something that felt real. There was a quiet strength in that. In feeding people truth. I was baking, yes, but I was also building something I could finally call my own. A few Saturdays later, I ran into an old family friend, Mrs. Dvorak, at the co-op in St. Paul. She was holding a carton of oat milk and leaned over, eyes wide. "Marta, that cake, you made it, didn't you? At the anniversary redo? My God, people are still talking about it." I blinked. "Oh?" She nodded enthusiastically. "I told Annalise it looked like something from one of those Paris bakeries." I said, "Did Candace make that?" And she said you did. Sounded surprised, honestly. But impressed. I gave a polite smile and changed the subject, but my chest burned. Not from shame but from that familiar, sharp mix of pride and fury. Surprised. As if excellence from me was a deviation from the norm. As if I'd finally behaved, finally contributed, finally offered something worthy of being shown off. Back in my car, I sat behind the wheel for a minute. Thinking. That was the thing about my family, it was never about whether I was capable. It was about whether I was convenient. Pleasant. Moldable. I had always been capable. They just never looked past their own expectations long enough to see it. The weekend after, I was icing a sheet cake when my doorbell rang. Unannounced. I wiped my hands on a towel and opened the door to find my father standing there with a white bakery box in his hands. He looked older than the last time I saw him, tired in a way that went beyond age. He wasn't a man who often showed up like this. He wasn't the bridge builder in the family. That was always Mom or Candace. Dad was the one who stayed in the background, shrugging through conflict like he wasn't part of it. "Thought I'd return the favor," he said, holding up the box. I stepped aside. We sat at my kitchen table. The cake inside was store-bought. White frosting, confetti sprinkles. Something generic from the supermarket. But he cut 2 slices, poured us both a glass of milk, and sat down like it was sacred. He didn't say much at first. Just ate. Then he looked at me and said, "You were right to leave. That day." I didn't see it then, but I see it now. I didn't expect that. Not from him. I should have said something, he went on. To your mom. To Candace. To you. I just never knew how. I wasn't raised to talk like that. I watched him carefully. Not out of suspicion, but because it was the first time I'd ever seen him crack open a little. "I'm not asking you to forget what happened," he said. "But maybe, don't disappear completely." I sat back in my chair, hands folded. I didn't disappear. I just stopped showing up to things that hurt. He nodded, slowly. Fair. He didn't offer a grand apology. He didn't promise change. But maybe he didn't have to. That moment, quiet, clumsy, and plain, was more real than anything I'd had with my family in years. After he left, I didn't feel lighter. Not exactly. But I felt grounded. Like something that had been off balance for years had finally tilted a little more in my favor. Later that night, I got a message from Candace. It was short. No emojis. No fake sweetness. "Dad said he came by. Didn't expect that. I'm not good at this stuff, but I want to try. Let me know if you're open to talking." I didn't answer right away. I let it sit. I had learned the value of not rushing to make others comfortable. I was still figuring out what I needed from these people, what I was willing to give, and what I would never allow again. But for the first time, they were the ones reaching toward me. Not demanding, not dismissing, but reaching. And that? That was new. I didn't reply to Candace's message for 2 days. Not because I was angry I wasn't anymore, but because I needed to decide if talking to her was for me, or just another thing I'd do out of habit. For years, I'd taken the olive branch, even when it came with splinters. But this time felt different. So I waited until I wasn't deciding out of guilt or nostalgia. I waited until I could feel my own weight in the decision. Then I texted back, "Okay. Let's talk. But I'm not going to pretend everything's fine. We're not picking up where we left off." She replied immediately. Asked if I wanted to meet for coffee. I said I'd think about it. Instead, I offered to call. We spoke the next night. It wasn't long. 28 minutes, according to the call log. The conversation was stiff at first. Candace tried to lead with small talk, how the kids were doing, something about their new kitchen tile. I didn't bite. Finally, I said, we're not doing this part. If you want to talk, let's actually talk. There was a pause. Then she said, okay. She admitted she'd been unkind. Not just at the party but always. That she'd gotten so used to making jokes at my expense, she didn't even realize how cruel they'd become. That it had been a pattern, one she'd never been called on until now. It's easy to paint you as difficult, she said quietly. Because you don't play along. That's always made everyone uncomfortable. I sat in silence, surprised at her honesty. I think I resented that, she added. That you weren't trying so hard. That you'd walk away when you'd had enough. I never felt like I could. That part stuck with me. It reminded me that sometimes, the people who mock your boundaries are the ones who never learned how to make their own. I didn't forgive her. Not right then. But I listened. When she asked what I needed, I told her, I need space. I need you to stop making me the butt of the joke just because I don't fit your script. I need honesty without performance. And I need time. She said she could do that. That she would try. And I said, trying is all I'm asking. We didn't cry. We didn't have some emotional breakthrough. It wasn't like in the movies where sisters fall into each other's arms and years of hurt dissolve. It was slower. Heavier. Real. And maybe, in some strange way, more hopeful because of that. A week after our call, a delivery showed up at my door. It was a bouquet black dahlias and soft pink peonies. There was a card. For the cake that shook the room. You were right. See. I didn't know how to feel at first. I stood there holding the vase like it might shatter in my hands. But I placed it on the windowsill in my kitchen and kept working. The flowers didn't fix anything. But they acknowledged it. And that was new. Mom called a few days after that. I didn't pick up. She left a voicemail, your sister said you spoke. I'd like to have one of those conversations with you too, when you're ready. There was something raw in her voice. Something tired. I haven't called back yet. I'm not sure what I want to hear from her or what I'd be willing to say. But it's on the table now, and for the first time, I get to decide when and how that happens. My world is quieter these days. But I feel more at home in it. My work is thriving. I've started taking photos of each cake I finish, not for a gallery or for social media, but just for me. A record of what I've built. And every now and then, someone asks me about the do-over cake. The one with the black dahlias. I usually just smile and say, that one taught me a lot. Because it did. Spring rolled in slowly that year. The kind of Minnesota spring where you can't tell if it's safe to put away your winter boots yet. I spent a lot of mornings out on the back step with coffee in hand, watching the world thaw. I was thawing too, in my own way. There was a time not long ago when I'd have spent this season knee-deep in family plans, chasing invitations, waiting on confirmations, wondering if I'd be included this time. That tension used to live in my shoulders. Now, it was gone. And I noticed its absence the same way you notice silence after a storm. It was peaceful. Then one Sunday morning in mid-April, I got a message that surprised me. Mom. Just a simple text, I'm going to the farmer's market downtown this morning. I'll be there around 10. If you're free, I'd like to walk a bit with you. Just talk. No pressure. I stared at it for a long time. She hadn't followed up after that voicemail. Hadn't pushed. And maybe that's what made it feel different. It wasn't a demand. It wasn't an ambush. It was an invitation with space to say no. But I didn't say no. I showed up. She was there by the honey stand, holding a canvas tote and wearing her gardening hat that made her look like someone out of a 1960s travel ad. When she saw me, she didn't reach out. She didn't smile too wide. She just said, thanks for coming, and handed me a coffee. We walked slowly. Talked about the tulips. The asparagus bundles that were way too expensive. the dog in a stroller wearing sunglasses. Small things, nothing heavy. After a few laps, we sat on a bench under a tree just starting to bud. She looked at me, hands folded in her lap. "I haven't always been kind to you," she said. And I think, for a long time I mistook performance for parenting. I said nothing. Let her fill the silence. "You were always strong. Not loud. Just, unshakable in your own way. And I didn't know what to do with that. It didn't fit the family photo." Her eyes welled up a little, but she didn't look away. "I let Candace run the show, and I let her pick you apart because it was easier than having real conversations. I think I resented you for not needing us the way we needed to be needed." That was probably the truest thing she'd ever said to me. I took a slow breath. "I don't need an apology if you don't mean it," I said, not harshly, just plainly. She shook her head. "I do mean it. I don't expect anything from you now. Just, maybe a chance to earn a little space back." We didn't hug. We didn't promise weekly brunches. But we stood up, walked back to our cars, and parted ways with a new understanding between us. A fragile one, but real. That night, I got an email from a woman named Teresa who'd been at the first garden party. A distant friend of my mother's. She wrote, "I just wanted to say how moved I was by your cake. Not just how beautiful it was, but how unapologetic it was. You said something with it. You probably don't even know what it meant to some of us watching. But I did. Thank you." I read that email 3 times. I think that's when I knew, the cake wasn't revenge. It was a declaration. It said, "I'm not who you wanted, but I'm still worth showing up for." It said, "You don't get to decide what beautiful looks like." It said, "I'm not here for your comfort, I'm here for me." I didn't need to yell, or explode, or cut anyone off completely. I didn't need to become someone hard to prove I was strong. I just needed to start choosing myself, consistently and without apology. That's the revenge no one expects, the kind where you stop begging for belonging and start building a life where you're the main character, not the extra trying to earn screen time. And as for my family? They've changed. Not overnight. Not dramatically. But they reach now. Carefully. Quietly. I still keep my distance, and I still draw lines. But they're learning. And I'm no longer shrinking to fit. The last cake I made for Candace was for her daughter's 7th birthday. She didn't dictate the design. She just said, "I trust you. Make something you'd be proud of." And I did. It had lavender buttercream and bold sugar violets, not pastel. Not subtle. But beautiful. Strong. Just like the woman who made it.